Awesome. With on that, then let's go ahead and get started. How many of you here would say you're? I guess what got you into SOTA? Were you a hiker first, and you found ham radio and said, "Let's do this thing," or were you ham radio first and found hiking and said, "Let's do this thing"? And nobody has to blurt out much. I'm just curious what really guys got some of you into this. We can come back to that in a bit because I've always been curious about that, especially for me. I was always an outdoors person, hiking, backpacking my whole life. And KC5CW, Curtis Hayes, he was in Texas at the time, now he's in Colorado. He introduced me to Summits on the Air back in 2013 when he came to my house, spent the weekend, and I hiked him up a local hill. Um, and so I saw it, and plus I was search and rescue at the time, and we always have a ham cram up here every spring. And so finally, I pulled the trigger in 2015 for the purpose of being able to do comms for search and rescue under an emergency context because we were constantly finding areas where the county coverage didn't quite work for us, and we'd have to fall back. Plus, anytime we, what do you call it? Anytime from the Tahoe side, I go over to the Placerville side, I intercommunicate a lot over ham radio while en route to any mission. So that's a little bit about how I got to SOTA. I was a hiker first, found ham radio through a coworker, and then now, as Mike called out, I'm the association manager. I'm Rex's bitch. That's the easiest way to say it. No, but he helps me, or sorry, he'll delegate things out to me every so often. I lied because I'm looking at that. But we're both responsible for Whiskey Six. As well, I am the IN regional manager. I believe we're good on RMs right now, but anyways, cool. Ooh, why is that blinking? Oh, chat's blowing up. Cool. All right. So anyway, safe SOTA. How to minimize the need for SAR while doing SOTA. Fortunately, in my area, and I know Dan AI6XG, I'm probably munging his call sign, but I know he works the north end of the lake a lot. There's a lot of other folks in the Bay Area that work the area, and it's actually been nice. I think the first year I lived up, or sorry, I've been living up here a while. The first year I was doing SOTA, I was pretty much a solo act. You maybe see the occasional call sign from the Bay Area once or twice on a nearby peak, but now I see a lot of hams up here. I know KM6TNT. You and I had a summit to summit last summer, or the summer before, I believe. I say a lot of the Bay Area people. Dan, I see Dan up. He seems to love Tinker's Knob, and I think Mount Lincoln. I think you do that one a fair amount. So cool. Anyways, I've never actually rescued a SOTA op. I'm happy about that. But it'd be something in the Ralston Peak, or sorry, Desolation Wilderness area. Quick disclaimer, I just pulled this out of the ARM. It's the only copyright data, but it's the usual thing, hiking and mountain climbing, really dangerous. As somebody called out, apparently I've done some pretty ambitious peaks out there. I know I've gone after a lot of first activations that may not be as deep as, say, Adam K6ARK or even Mike, Mike Gilligan. I can't remember his call sign right now. But anyways, I know those guys do some stuff deep in Southern Sierra, but we have our fair share up here in Northern Sierra as well, and I do get down south every so often. But yeah, mountains in California, a lot of mountains that have zeros on them are actual rock climbs. I've done a couple of rock climb first activations. So disclaimer, just get it out of the way. SOTA can be dangerous, and it's not the SOTA itself that can be dangerous unless you decide to activate during a lightning storm, but getting to the peaks is where you can run into problems. And with that, I actually will throw out, just getting to the summit is not the goal. The goal is to get home safely at the end of the day. Getting to the summit is halfway. I'm a big leave no trace proponent. Why can't I make this thing go away? Ooh, there we are. Let's do that right there. Anyways, I'm a big leave no trace proponent. I'm a leave no trace trainer. And fittingly enough, there are two that directly impact part of your success with Summits on the Air. First one being prepare and plan ahead. It's not enough to go and read Bob Burb's trip reports. It actually helps to maybe look at maps, whatever you use for mapping, Caltopo, Gaia, whatever. Take the time to do the research you need to do. Read the summit post articles, read some of the trip reports. I've kind of transitioned more to peak bagger this year, because some of those harder to get peaks I've been working in Nevada, I'm only finding beta about them on peakbagger.net. So you actually get into some of these areas where you're really studying the map, trying to read the topography, and is there a route there? And let's jump over here to Google Earth or sat imagery, whatever. But there have been peaks where it's taken me 2 to 3 weeks just to plan the route to ensure a safe and successful activation. And 9 times out of 10, I end up being 4 hours late anyway. So, and I had one big blown activation earlier this year for that reason. Actually, it wasn't blown. I just didn't get my 4. I got 3 contacts, and I was on summit pretty much till 5 p.m. hoping to get the 4th before UTC rollover. Just didn't happen. Anyways, know before you go is another way. Prepare and plan ahead. Has been expressed in the past. If you ever get into any of the avalanche stuff, maybe some of you in Southern California remember the big search and rescue on Baldy/San Antonio last year. I don't know the full details there, but avalanche safety, I'm not really sure if you guys have like avalanche reporting down there, but it's worth it to maybe get a beginner's avalanche course, or at least some understanding of how avalanches work in the winter. But all that, know before you go, prepare and plan ahead, know what you're getting yourself into. And the big thing, and I see this a lot in the search and rescue world, is that know your limits. What are you actually capable of? If you can only hike 20 miles, don't try to chip off a 25-mile day hike. I've had plenty of what we call fetch and retrieves, where I'm essentially ferrying in Gatorade and food to help rehabilitate somebody in the backcountry just to walk them out. Or we just resort to the helicopter. But reality is, I didn't realize coming up from sea level to 9,000 feet was going to affect me the way it does. So know what your limits are. Don't bite off something big. Don't sit there and think, oh, you know what? For my first summit, I'm going to go activate Mount Whitney. Something I do, it's something I've just picked up over the years. Whenever I do my maps, I actually print out a copy, and then I flip it over and I write a whole bunch of data, so that it doesn't matter what county I'm in. If I'm 4 or 5 hours overdue, my wife knows, well, she can call 911 as well, but if she were to call some of the, well, it'd be better for her to call 911, but reality is just she could say, I have a map, I have all his data, a deputy can come get it and transmit it on to the responding agency. That said, I will never call for search and rescue in my county. That would be a little embarrassing. The other thing too, respect wildlife. Very first activation I ever did, I did the one thing you don't do, or the one thing that you don't want to happen to you, and that's get between mom and a cub. And I was doing a lot of things that some people would question. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that, but whatever. I'd like to think I have a good head on my shoulders, or I'm just hella lucky. Whatever the case may be, I was doing a lot of off-trail navigation. I was actually just practicing navigation. Going to a first activation summit in kind of a popular area, and I had great handrails because I knew that area really well. But I was banging along about every 2 to 3 minutes. Hey bear, hey bear. Heard the rustle, saw the fluffy brown butt running away from me. Realized it wasn't a Newfoundland or Great Dane, not Great Dane, other big dog, not German Shepherd, but realized it wasn't a Saint Bernard. Stopped, looked for mom, and saw that she wasn't very far away from me. And I've done a write-up of this on my blog, but slowly backed away from her, repositioned myself to put her between me and the cub, and then proceeded back up the trail. And about 50 yards below the Tahoe Rim Trail, a mountain biker finally came whizzing by and scared her off. But reality is, that's one of those respect the wildlife. I didn't freak out. I didn't run up a tree, didn't whatever. And the reality is even after I'd repositioned her, she paced me for quite a while until the mountain biker came along. So yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with cougars because I've only seen one ever. That was actually in San Jose in an urban environment. running across the disc golf course while I was playing with my son. It's the only time I've ever seen a coyote in the wild. I know in the more urban areas, coyotes have become a problem over the last 15 years. Again, follow whatever rules, I don't want to call them rules, best common practices for dealing with the larger wildlife. Most of the time, bear, if he is charging you, he's just a bluff charge. The ones you do have to worry about, mom and cub. I assume it's going to be the same thing with the mountain lions. Mom's looking for food for the babies. It's not that she may be looking at you as bait, but if you turn and run, she's going to read that as a prey instinct and potentially engage with you, fight, whatever the case may be. But I'll leave it up to you. And, and I include do not fear it, because that fear, that panic that we initiate is ultimately what they key in on. And that's why the cougars can actually be a little bit more problematic. But yeah, especially for those of you in those southern mountains in Southern California, you have a lot more mountain lions than, I think we have one mountain lion in the basin ever, and I've only seen her footprints once or twice. So anyways, yeah, but know and understand, respect the wildlife, don't fear it, and figure out what's right there. That's a bit all I'll say on LNT. Hopefully some of us have actually heard of the 10 essentials. For those of us that are maybe new to the hiking world, these are, and this is years of experience of tons of backpackers, hikers, mountaineers, whatever the case may be, have come up with this list. It's pretty, and it's kept up with modern times. It's not, necessarily old school stuff, but it's not necessarily gonna, we're all gonna have bad days. We're gonna break an ankle, something like that. As long as you are in a healthy state, you have your wits about you, it's not a dire situation. If you have the 10 essentials, 9 times out of 10, you're going to survive it. I have actually gone and removed fire because I think we can all agree in the state of California, or actually, let me rephrase that, in all the Western states, the word fire is quickly becoming the new F word. I love my campfires. Nothing's more cooler than that first shower after a camping trip. You wash your hair and you get that smell of soapy smoke coming out of your hair. It's like, ooh, there's the campfire again. I love my campfire. I haven't had one in about 18 months though, because we just quite haven't had the conditions for it. It's been extreme fire danger for going on a couple of years now, or it's too snowy. But anyways, that said, I've removed fire and actually replaced it with something called signaling, and we'll get to that shortly. I love this shirt because I think it's actually very applicable to our state. I see this a lot with the Inyo County team and Mount Whitney. I see it here, although not necessarily leaving the excited dog in the car. We love our dogs up here. People take dogs all the way up the big mountains. Never bring fresh batteries. And the thing is as we go through this, you'll see the joke when we get to the real version of it. You'll leave trail looking for your dog. Climb 14ers afternoon. That's a big thing in Colorado. If you ever head out for ham 14er, you need to be well off the summit by noon, because by about 1 o'clock, the sky starts making a little bit of noise, and you'll get lightning, etc. If hiking with friends, separate. If you're going out on group activations, stay together. If there's ever a chance you'll get separated, and I actually do see this a lot here with groups of people who come up, I got tired, my friends went on without me, I wasn't paying attention, I have no idea where I'm at, and oh, by the way, my phone's at 3%, I had just enough to call 911 type thing. So communicate. One of the things I'll actually borrow from avalanche safety. If you're going out with a group of people on a group activation, share the plan with everybody. Come up with something referred to as an incident action plan. Basically just, here's what we're going to do. Here's our turnaround time. Let's all try to get there. We'll all try to stay together, but if anybody falls back, that's great. Maybe one person can fall back with them, but make sure that if you all do get separated, that everybody knows the route. Everybody understands the route. More of that print maps, whatever. But let's get to the real ones now. Navigation. I assume we all have various forms of navigation. I pretty much use a combination of old school and new school. I love my paper maps because they never fail. I've had GPSs die on me for various reasons, batteries being one, and maybe I forgot those spare batteries. my smartwatch, my my Garmin Phoenix. I've I've actually had instances where I accidentally drop it while I'm plugging it, and I literally go from 100% to 0 in 6 hours. And if I have any intention of recording, I'm just nuking it that much faster. So if you're going to go the digital route, always have spare batteries. Maybe you remember that joke on the green shirt about forget fresh batteries. Always have spare batteries. When we get to illumination here, that'll also make more sense. The sad thing is GPSs, depending on what you're using, don't use AAAs. Headlamps don't use AA's. I wish that's something that could be fixed. Although I know there's some fancy and bigger ones out there, but you can get some pretty lightweight headlamps if you use AAA. But yeah, whether it's a headlamp, a super beam LED, whatever the case may be, have some form of illumination. We don't always plan on coming down in the dark, but I'm guaranteed at least 2 to 3 epic outings per year where I might be up at the butt crack of dawn. I'm on the trail by 6 a.m. and I'm still coming down in the dark in the middle of summer because it was a big summit with a long approach. Maybe I should have considered overnighting it, whatever the case may be, but I always make sure I have a headlamp. And sun protection. It's California. I don't really need to say much more than that. It's always sunny here, except for the 5 days a year it's not. Not having sun protection can actually help dehydrate you quicker. First aid, you don't have to sit there and carry, like you go to REI and you see the big packs. My Ziploc bag isn't much bigger than my the Ziploc bag that is my first aid kit, not much bigger than this. Moleskin, but I hardly ever have blisters. Actually, I've never had blisters because I wear trail runners, and I just have good feet for boots. Band-Aids, gauze, just little things. I do actually carry a quick clotting kit just in case, because when you're going off trail, ripping yourself through Manzanita, you don't know, you might end up poking yourself. I carry aspirin, Advil, whatever. Knife, multi-tool. This is where I'm going to I typically do carry a Swiss Army knife, but if I think I'm going to be on something a little bit more ambitious, I will actually carry more of a survival style knife, 4-inch single tang. If you want to get into survivalism, we can have another conversation about that. But 9 times out of 10, I am carrying a multi-tool. Shelter, again, the 4-inch blade is a great knife for building shelter if you're in a treated area. But I actually carry a Bothy bag, and I finally deployed it on an activation recently in the middle of a July snowstorm down in Yosemite. It's just something to keep the elements off of you. The worst thing you can do is let yourself get wet, especially in that mountainous environment where temperatures can swing from 75 and sunny. You get that afternoon summer storm, all of a sudden it's 50 degrees, blowing wind, and you just got wet from the quick thunderstorm that dumped some rain on you. So just something to get out of the elements. Do understand that if you're dealing with lightning, the proper position you should use. Try not to have more than 2 contact points, technically your heels or the balls of your feet, to the ground in a lightning storm. Because ground strikes can travel through the ground. Signaling device, that's what I'm replacing fire with. Technically, fire has always been served multiple purposes, a signal device, and also for keeping warm. If you have some of the other stuff that we're about to get to, staying warm is not necessarily going to be a problem. And especially for those of you that might have been in San Diego, say in 2003, you might remember the Cedar Fire, or in Groveland in 2013, the King Rim Fire. Hunter was lost. It was getting dark, didn't know where he was. In both cases here, lit a small fire. In the case of the Cedar Fire, actually lit Manzanita. If you know anything about Manzanita, late in the year when we're into the dry period, Manzanita is primarily turpentine. You don't think that burns hot and fast. But yeah, and the same thing with the fire in Groveland in 2013, 2014. Anyways, Hunter lost, tired, lit a fire, winds picked up, got away from him. Anyways, that said, signaling device. If you are fortunate enough to be rescued by helicopter and let me write that down because I didn't even think about some of the aspects I wanted to cover with helicopters as it relates to costs and things like that. But with helicopters, this right here, whoops, just activating your phone, activating the screen, literally blows up their NVGs, their night vision goggles. Not in a bad way, but if you're maybe in, hopefully not too dense of a forest, whatever, you could literally sit there and just turn on the screen of your phone, and just hold it like that above your head, and it'll just shine really bright for them. Actually, earlier this summer, and I heard it once last summer, one of the CHP pilots was, it would be great, I'm going to work with Governor Newsom, whatever. I want to bill pass it. If you're going to hike in the backcountry, you carry a 3x3 orange patch, or maybe we'll make all the pack companies make it, whatever. But he was really ranting on the fact that for whatever reason is one color that really stands out. Having been on helicopters while looking for subjects, and like especially in granite in summer, the heat sensor, the FLIR system is useless. We flew over this one lady who was literally standing in a very very granite area, or very rocky area, and it was primarily granite on Pyramid Peak. We flew right over her, within 50 feet of her. FLIR did not see her. FLIR is infrared, helicopter infrared system. Flew right over her 50 feet, didn't even see her on FLIR. However, if they'd had a chunk of orange, we might have seen the chunk of orange, so it was a good visual cue. Or if you've got an the sight mirror on your compass, depending on what compass you might carry. Food. I'm going to caveat a couple things here. If it's a day hike, 1,500 calories, that should give you enough to sustain. You can survive. Keyword here is survive up to 3 weeks without food. If you're lost for 3 weeks, we've got other problems going on. For me, if I go out overnight, I typically carry 48 hours of food if it's like supposed to be just one night. And it's not like I'm carrying big meals or whatever. I do dehydrate a lot of my stuff. Water, the ability to gather water. Yeah, that's pretty much self-explanatory. Tablets, chemicals, live straw, whatever you prefer. I've always used iodine. I still use iodine. I've never gotten sick off of any water I've encountered. And I don't know, when people say, oh, that stuff tastes bad, whatever, I just don't know what they're really talking about there. So I just use the tablets because they're super lightweight. And it takes 30 minutes, whatever. And then insulation, again, with the shelter, with the insulation, whether it be a puffy. I always carry a 600 puffy in the summer. Usually carry some dry mountaineering socks. I just like being able to put dry socks on my feet. It's the one lesson my dad taught me because he was in the Army, whatever. Always protect your feet. If your feet are protected, you're always going to be happy. And by protected, dry, warm, whatever. And so throwing on some mountaineering smart wools is a wonderful thing when you're soaking wet. And I just thought I'd throw this back up there again, just so we can kind of look at it and laugh. Alcohol for rehydration, not a good thing. Ignore the weather forecast, which goes with the Climb 14 afternoon. Let the children run ahead in mountain lion country. And then call us when your cell phone's about to die. All right. And with all that, I'm going to open this one up for a couple of seconds and say, what's the single most important that maybe I haven't talked about yet that you can actually have with you on the trail or on the mountains? And anybody can yell something out if you want.
Good brain.
There, wow, first time. Cool. Maybe you've heard me talk about this before. Kind of going back to the scenario with the bear that I talked about, what kept me somewhat safe or lucky, whatever the case may be, was I had done two things. I was A, announcing my presence, hey, I'm in the area, hey bear, and then B, as soon as I realized what was going on, I stopped. I didn't turn, I didn't run, I didn't do any of that. I just stopped and scanned, and that'll actually come up again here in a minute, scanned my surroundings, because I knew Mom had to be somewhere. If she wasn't, great, that would have made things a whole lot easier, but in that case, I used my brain, I kept my calm, I kept my cool, I took the time to realize, hey, the bear, the cub went this way, Mom's right here. The best thing I can do is back away and not go forward, whatever. So your brain, just having your brain with you. at least in my world, what I see up here with the search and rescue stuff, and I know the Indio folks down at Whitney, and and some of the other search and rescue people I've talked to, especially with search theory. I'm a tracker, and so I study a lot of search theory. What we see is the first bad decision. It's like, oh, I can self-correct. I can self-correct. I can self-correct. Now, the best thing you can do is just, stop and chill out and assess things before you really get and start making bad decisions that lead to other bad decisions that lead to panic decisions, which are further bad decisions. So always have your brain with you in the backcountry. Usually the stories you hear about on the news, oh, the experienced backcountry traveler who, fell off the cliff, or just, lost for days. Nobody knew where they were. Those are the people who, we get that, it's part of a type A personality. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I had it earlier, but, that assumed expertise. Oh, I've done this 100 times. I've never had an issue. I know what I'm doing. I'm great. Just keep going. You'll figure it out at the end. So you just always have your brain, know how to use the things you've brought with you. Do you have a map and compass? Sure. Do you know how to use it? No. I've always relied on my GPS telling me which direction to go. That's not the way to deal. That's not the way you want to talk to a search and rescue person if they're asking you those questions. So for everything we've talked about, the 10 essentials, the prepare and plan ahead, use your brain, know how to use the stuff you have with you, and practice. I love going out and trying to get myself lost just to see, can I get back to the car from the summit, even though I took this wrong turn that just added 5 miles to my out route. So never be afraid to practice that. All right. Well, damn, things went wrong. Now what? So the perfect day just turned very non-perfect. Now what? I'm going to approach this from two different perspectives. Are you lost or are you injured? So are you lost? If you followed my advice and are plan and prepare ahead, someone back home should be able to have a good idea of where you are. When you start looking at a map and accounting for being lost and having what's called the point last seen, if your point last seen was the summit, because, oh, by the way, we have a SOTA watch alert for you at 1500 PST, and you were on the top of Mount Baldy. I'm just going to pick on Mount Baldy for you guys. Mount Baldy you were there at 1300, your last spot, whatever, QRT, whatever. We have search and rescue has some idea of where you are. For context, if you go, I wish I should have looked these numbers up, but if you go an hour later, 2 hours later, 3 hours later, imagine the circumference of the search area required to look for you as you moved 2 miles, 4 miles, 6 miles away from Mount Baldy, whether the right direction or the wrong direction. So if you've done the prepare and plan ahead, you've left your route at home, somebody knows who to call to come and find you, stop. And this is what we teach our sixth graders up here, the stop and hug a tree. STOP is an acronym for stop, think, observe, and plan. Literally stop, just don't do anything else. Think, okay, when was the last time I felt like I was on the route? Do I think I know the direction I came from? Observe, what do you have with you that can help you deal with the next few hours? Do you actually have a map and compass and know how to use it well enough to maybe work your way back to a location you knew or know well, or something that's recognizable? You were on the summit at 1500 hours, 3 o'clock. You think you can get yourself back to the summit. And then plan. Now, if you've gone through this whole process and you don't think you can get yourself out safely, just stop and wait. Hug a tree. For a couple of different reasons. Trees provide shelter, trees provide warmth, in the context that they do radiate some radiant heat in the area. Nothing's worse than a missing subject who lets folks know, come find me, and decides to keep moving. If you did have the ability to call 911, I don't know where I'm at, stay right there. When you do call 911, it does transmit your lat long, and the closer you are to perfect triangulation, the actual better those coordinates are. But typically it's going to, even if you're on one tower, the lat long that gets sent in when you call 911 is going to be good enough to get search and rescue teams to within voice contact of you. So if you've called 911, hey, I'm lost, I'm on this trail. As soon as they say, okay, we've got somebody coming, or you talk to a deputy that says, yeah, we've got somebody coming, stay put, don't keep moving. That's happened to us a few times, and that's definitely taken what should have been a 2 to 3 hour fetch and retrieve to a full-on search that took an extra 3 to 4 hours because we don't necessarily know which direction that person went. Their cell phone's already dead because they called 911 at 3%, and that 3% went with the 911 call. And this is now a full-scale search, not a fetch. Cool. Are you injured or fatigued? Going back to the rule of threes, and I've kind of alluded to it in a different way. If anybody here has ever had any sort of survivalism or survival training, the rules of three are you have 3 minutes to address any potentially life-threatening medical issues in the field. Typically, it's focused on loss of airway, but just focus on all the ABCs, airway, bleeds, and cerebral, cranial. There are some things you're just not going to be able to resolve in the field. Do not try to resolve it. If you blow a shoulder, dislocate it because you just took a 50-yard rip down a hillside, try to stabilize it as best you can, and if you can walk, hike yourself out, whatever. But the main thing is, if you're dealing with like a blocked airway, might be hard if you're trying to do it's like self-Heimlich or whatever. But anything you can address that's major needs to be addressed immediately within that 3-minute time slot. And keep your wits about you. Get that 911 call. And I kind of say this tongue in cheek, but anybody ever tried to do an AED with a 4,500 milliamp battery? If you live at sea level and go up to altitude, I'm not going to say you have a risk of stroke or anything like that, but I have seen that as a trigger to cardiac events in the mountains. Kind of why I threw that out there tongue in cheek, because reasonably fit individuals run marathons, whatever. Just the chemical change that goes on with your body to address altitude can actually trigger cardiac events. At least what I've seen and read in some journals as it relates to wilderness medicine. Cool. We could go on and on. I don't really want to get into cold weather other than to say, for insulation, have the right stuff. I've been out with people who had the wrong gear, and we've had to do hurried evacs because they ended up coming down with hypothermia in the middle of a strong storm. If they had had better gear, we could have sheltered in place, and they probably wouldn't have gotten hypothermia. Or even if they had, with other stuff, we could have actually sheltered in place and fixed them, or waited till the next day, sun come out, whatever. And the incident I'm thinking of, we actually ended up hiking out in a blizzard. The tracks that we'd laid down on this incoming hike completely gone, and we could see the trail corridor because of what was cut, but our visibility was no more than 10 feet because of the 50-mile-an-hour blowing winds and snow. Again, just keep your wits about you. This is the best tool for dealing with the unplanned. Always expect the unplanned. You're going to survive more by not panicking than, you could have all the tools above, but if you lose your brain, if you lose your shit, you've really hurt your chances of survival. Sometimes you just need to freak out and get it over with, but having the wherewithal to freak out, get it over with, and realize, okay, I got that out of my system, now what? Some people can do that. That's great. You just need to get past that. Other people, it's just a downhill from there. On that note, again, that survival instinct that we as humans have, you've done everything right. You've waited. You've stayed in place. You've been mentally strong for that time. Just because search and rescue team shows up doesn't mean you can relax. And this is one of the cool psychological factors I've loved trying to study and observe is how a person reacts when help shows up and they decide, I no longer need to fight to survive. You can actually witness altered mental state occur in that case where they're like, I'm great to, just quivering balls of putty until you can get some food, some Gatorade, some hot chocolate, some whatever in them, and the caloric intake kind of bumps their metabolism again. So just because search and rescue shows up doesn't mean you can stop thinking, doesn't mean you can turn off your brain. Anyone heading into the outdoors, try to get some wilderness training. I've been fortunate in that 40 plus years of playing in the woods. I've only ever come up on somebody on my own, not as part of any search and rescue or anything else, but only once where I've come up on somebody who needed actual assistance. I had just enough first aid to kind of help them rehabilitate themselves, and I'm going to get on that in a second, so that they could get themselves out and at least help point them in the right direction. With that in mind, and you're going to hear this if you take these classes. I've had both WWOOFer and WAFA. WAFA's great for what we do in Summits on the Air. I have the WWOOFer for search and rescue. WWOOFer's Wilderness Outdoor First Responder. You'll hear this with the study with when you take these classes. Oh shit, that took longer than I thought it would. Anyways, you'll hear this when you take these classes that in the backcountry, the best thing you can try to do is actually rehabilitate somebody. If you're new to this outdoors thing, don't travel alone. I'm out alone a lot. Probably 90% of my outings are out alone. And I've had some hard nights, and some hard nights I was actually glad I wasn't with somebody because I was frustrated with how shitty the conditions were. And it just would have been doubly hard on both of us because then we've got our emotions fighting with each other as well. So yeah, things went wrong. The best thing you can do, keep your head about you, address what you can in the backcountry. And if you've kind of followed everything leading into the experience, you will come out fine. Somebody will come and get you, or you'll be able to get yourself out depending on how things went. The thing about helicopters, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I don't know if it's because we read about these stories in France, Chamonix area, whatever, but in Europe where once that helicopter blade spins, it's like the taxi cab dropping the fare flag, and it's cranking up at tens of thousands of dollars an hour. While that is true, if an air ambulance comes and gets you in the U.S., whether it's CalStar, Care Flight, I'm trying to think of or Reach Medical in Southern California, as long as that's not who's coming to get you, unless you are a member of their service, helicopter rescues with the National Guard, the U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, state of California with CHP are technically free rides. Those are taxpayers. Those are paid for with your tax dollars. In fact, we had one of the CHP helicopters up here relate a story to me once that this one individual kept trying to do the Rubicon in an ill-equipped vehicle and kept hitting his spot, and he had been pulled off the Rubicon 3 times. And this particular pilot had pulled him twice. And on the second time, which was his third activation of the spot, he actually looked at that helicopter pilot and says, "Oh, I've had you before. You must be my personal Uber in the sky." Don't treat these guys with disrespect if they're coming in to get you, because flying a helicopter into the mountainous areas has its own level of inherent risk. So yeah, but if the Coast Guard's coming to get you, if you're close to the ocean, CHP's coming to get you. They work the Sierras a lot, and they love doing it. They love to fly. Or if you're fortunate enough to be in a county with a helicopter, but if it is a public services helicopter, that is a free ride. That fear right there has kept so many people from calling 911. Understand that the 911 people, the county sheriffs, the ones that run search and rescue, they're going to try to go to the public services groups first. They will all, like here locally, we go to CHP first. If we don't have CHP, then we go to CalStar, then we go to Nevada, Care Flight. And then after that, we're calling the National Guard, or in our case, we call Fallon Naval Air Station / Top Gun, because they have a crack fleet of search and rescue helicopters, AH-60 Seahawks. And that's a last resort. I've only been on one mission in 8 years where we used the Fallon Longhorns, but I've been on multiple what do you call them? Army and National Guard Blackhawks. I think that might be it. Oh yeah, communications. Just very quickly, I'm constantly surprised at what works where. APRS, at least for me, has been pretty successful. More and more, I'm still getting the there's a spot where I actually have decent cell service. I try not to rely on cell service. I mean, my God, we got 2-meter radios. I mean, surely we can, especially if we did actually have, for those of you in Southern California, at least closer to the urban areas, you probably got what you need right there. But whatever works for you, just make sure it works where you're going. Yeah, and inReach works pretty well. I keep getting burned by Iridium. I'm not really a fan of theirs, so I don't use them on a personal level. But we do use them for search and rescue, and they're always failing. Obviously, in the East Coast, you have other issues as it comes to like sat communications because you have to deal with trees for you out there, Brad. Anyways, that's really all I have time, so I'm going to open it up. I know I actually was surprised I went as long as I did. I figured I'd rip through this fast. But if you have any questions, I'm willing to hang out and take them and listen and talk.
Jamie, you had mentioned lightning. What's your, so I'm out there, big lightning storm comes up. What now?
Get the hell out of there.
Yeah, I usually do that.
Yeah. Okay, so I've had 3 different encounters. And the first one was on Dunderberg Peak a couple of years ago. I didn't even see the storm coming up. I ascended under blue sky. It was blue sky when I was setting up, and I had literally just gotten Gary and Martha. For those that don't know, Gary and Martha, W0MNA, and Weary, W0ERI. Yeah, I think everybody here that's a general or better knows Martha. If you're not, as soon as you get your first general SSB activation, you'll quickly learn who Gary and Martha are. But I had literally just gotten them, and my headphones started buzzing in my ears. Like when I reached up, I could feel the static in my ears. And so I just very quickly dropped the mast. The best thing you can do, just turn everything off. If you think you've got time to get out of there, pack up, clear the area, clear the scene, and then leave, descending as fast and as safe as you can. Lightning's typically drawn to the tallest object. If you are standing on a tall object, if you are standing on top of a mountain, you could technically be that tall object. Plus, if you do get a ground strike on the summit, you could be close enough to get some residual discharge if you're close enough. So drop everything, power everything off, drop it as quickly and as safely as you can, and get out of there. Going back to another incident, I had dropped everything, I had powered everything off, and I was getting off the summit in a hurry. And even at 200 feet below the summit, my gear was buzzing in my bag, and my mast was buzzing in my bag, or in my hand rather. But I still hadn't heard any thunder. I still hadn't seen any lightning. I just got out of there because of the fact that the storm was coming in. And so just had all this static field going on around me, and it was actually charging my equipment. So yeah, get out of there as quickly as you can, as safely as you can. If you are truly caught in there, the general consensus is stand on the balls of your feet, crouched down, kind of like this. And you just basically have to sit that way for as long as you can in the storm. I actually have bad knees, and that's kind of hard for me to do. Put a little like if you're carrying trekking poles or you've got an antenna mast, get away from it. Because again, trekking poles, carbon fiber, aluminum, they are conductive. Our fishing poles, or whatever you're using for a 20-foot mast, I'll use an avalanche probe sometimes. Those are all conductors. So try to get some separation between yourself and the rest of your gear. And I'm a little bit OCD about this, but I will actually go and turn off all my electronics, phone, watch, everything, and put it all in my pack over there, and I'll go over here about 20, 30 feet away and hunker down. Anybody else?
So I really appreciated your nod towards the wilderness medicine piece. I'm a volunteer firefighter EMT and was a wilderness EMT for a while and am a ski patroller. So we have outdoor emergency care with National Ski Patrol. So just out of curiosity, on the East Coast, it's largely Solo is one of the biggest ones, or Knowles is the biggest one. I feel like WMA is larger on the West Coast. Do y'all have all three organizations, or do people lean towards one or the other?
A lot of times you can go get wilderness first aid even at your local REI. I've seen it hosted some places. My community college here actually runs a really strong wilderness ed program. The program's now run by a former leader and lead trainer for the Marine Mountain Warfare Center down in Bridgeport, California. He came up here a couple of years ago and revamped the program. So we actually run WWOOFer and WAFA up here, and it's all WMA based. And a lot of times, I mean, just getting your BLS card, your basic lifesaver card, via Red Cross. So if you have access to your local Red Cross, a lot of that works. Knowles, I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been on the East Coast to know how much they charge anymore. But like in the case of the community college, I think $150 to go get the 80-hour WWOOFer certification. So, and what do you call it? WAFA, or Wilderness First Aid, is a 36-hour course. And so that's, what do you call it? It's like a 1 credit hour. And community college, you're talking about $50. So yeah, and actually I meant to say, Brad, last year I have a plan to do the AT, all of it, as a SOTA trip. Oddly enough, the AT is only good for 800 points for someone that's on the air. And it's all Maryland South, mostly Maryland South, until you get back up into the Whites in Maine and that area. So cool. Other questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, aside from it's David, N6AN,
Yes.
what are some of the less common or maybe not so obvious symptoms of being above your altitude or being affected by the altitude?
Everybody has different thresholds. I tend to start getting really loopy at about 12,000 feet. I get real emotional. And it's going to be different for different people. I remember the first time I was on Mount Whitney, there was this guy that was just, and it was true AMS, or sorry, it was true altitude related. Yeah, he was just singing some weird songs, but his speech was very slurred. One of the things we'll refer to, I hear it more referred to in the winter context with the cold and hypothermia, but I've seen what's called the UMBLS, UMBLS, with AMS as well, with the altered mental state, and that's stumble, mumble, fumble, an obvious loss of some physical dexterity. So those are some of the keys. Headache. The harsher the headache, the worse the symptoms. You might actually be looking at potentially a cerebral edema, but depending on how extreme the conditions are, or sorry, the symptoms are, determines how quickly you need to flush down the hill. But yeah, mental dexterity issues, the umbles, as I said. Loopy behavior. God, is that guy stoned out of his head or what? Literally, that's one of the things you might think. How drunk is that guy? How many shots did he have on the summit? So just things don't look right for someone who's probably in the hills. And you'll tell, like I said, with the guy on Whitney, I knew he wasn't acting normal. I actually just knew that, he was undergoing some level of AMS. So getting out there and figuring out what your thresholds are helps. And for me, I typically gradually build up. Weekend 1, 10,000, weekend 2, 11,500, 11 to 11,500. And I just kind of step up into incrementals if I know I'm going to have like back-to-back weekends before I go after any 14ers or 13ers. Anybody else? Actually, were there questions in the chat that I should go and run through real quick? renting an RV, hike the High Sierra Trail. That's a fun one. Cool. Awesome. Wow. We went way over. I'm sorry. I thought I literally could have ripped through this in 30 minutes. Anyways, if I got anything else, I'm here and willing to answer questions.
Just a quick comment. Coming down the Whitney Trail, probably within a mile from the Whitney portal, a guy was coming the other direction, and he was asking me, "Is this the way to the Whitney portal?" And he was just that fried after coming down the last, or I don't know, the 20 miles he'd done round trip so far. So I
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that comes back to the know your limits. You know, if you think you could, it takes a lot of stamina to be out there all day, plus the hour or so you sit. That probably wears me out more than the hike, the sitting. And I love to sit on the summit. I'll spend 2 and 3 hours just sitting on the summit. Only 90 of it's activation, but usually after 3 bands of CW, my brain is like just blah. And I take the next little bit to kind of get my wits back about me before the hike out, just because I want my head with me when I'm going down, especially on those harder peaks.
Oh, and one more thing about it. He had been separated from his party because I guess he was going slow.
Yes. Yep. And so he was kind of already in over his head. And I haven't been on Whitney since 2005. But even then, in the time that I was down there, those few times, I got to get down there just to activate it at some point. But yeah, you see the person with not even this much water, just like the 16-ounce bottle of water, and that's all they're carrying up, no pack. Yeah, I'm gonna make the summit. Yeah. Anyways, cool.
Jamie, I don't know if you touched on it or not, but I just wanted to add, if you did, or emphasize, for me, and I know a lot of others too, is caloric intake and water when you go up high.
Yeah.
You're sweating off, even though it's not very hot or whatever. Your body's using up a lot more water at that altitude. I had my first experience of altitude sickness this year, and it was a drive up. We were on Pikes Peak.
Oh, yeah.
We'd been staying at 9,000 feet. We'd done some hikes up to 11 or 12. Was doing okay, but we got up to Pikes Peak, and I got all busy on my little summit operation there. I wasn't drinking water, and I wasn't eating enough, and all of a sudden I started feeling a little queasy. So with me, it was like I get like a motion sickness, and so when we got back to the Jeep, I had some I forget what it's called. It's some kind of a motion sickness pill, like you take for seasickness. I had my little first aid kit that helped. So about 3 weeks later or so, I hiked Mount Antero, which was 14,200 something, and four-wheel drive up to the trailhead, and you have to hike the last 600 feet. And younger people were going by me and probably doing it in about an hour. You can see almost the whole climb. It's all talus and rock and everything. It's class 2 with a little bit of class 3. It kicked my butt, but I kept taking forced breaks because I remembered my altitude sickness I just had. Took some of those little squeeze snacks for runners and stuff.
Yep.
And whether I thought I needed it or not, I took it. But the other thing that really helped, and I wonder what your opinion is on it, Jamie, and I did it because a friend recommended it, and he was in Colorado, and he had done 414ers. He's not a ham, but he had done 414ers. He carried those little cans of oxygen you can get now. So,
oh, really? Wow.
I'm sorry?
I said, oh, really? Wow.
You buy the big 5, and the small ones, you get like 40 shots. I carried 2 of those. My wife was going to come with me when she saw the hike. She decided to wait in the Jeep. So I carried 2, and about every 15, 20 minutes, I'd sit down and I'd take about 4 hits of that. And it is amazing how much better I felt. But it only lasts for a few minutes, but it's recovery, and And so I just think when you're up there that high, and I'm in my 60s, you know, so I have to take it easy. I do my cardiovascular and everything, but it's, you know, I can't hike it like I used to. But it's, you know, that hydration, the caloric intake, and take breaks whether you think you need to or not. It just
Yep.
lets your body recover.
Yep.
That's my opinion on it.
No, that's very good stuff. I've fortunate to say I've only had altitude sickness once ever, and I encountered it at 9,000 feet on my climb for Mount Aconcagua. I managed to make it to 22,000 feet, no problem, but for 3 days I was stuck at 13,000 feet. I managed to get from 9 to 13, but for 3 days that was the most pain I've ever felt. Just walking 100 yards was the most painful thing I'd ever done. Massive headache. Might have been maybe a little bit more extreme, but the people I was with didn't think I was into haze. High altitude cerebral edema and pulmonary edema are the only real altitude. Well, those are extreme enough that you need to get off the hill immediately. AMS, you can rehabilitate yourself and continue your climb, but you just have to be methodical and slow about it. And a lot of it is, as you called out, Ron, hydration and caloric intake, and know what works for you. So, yeah.
Oh, where was that? Where was that, Jamie?
I'm sorry, say it again, David.
Where was that, Jamie?
Aconcagua down in Argentina.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the top? Isn't that one of like the top 10 in the world, Aconcagua, or is it one of? It's a big one, right?
It is the tallest peak outside of the Himalayas. It's 22,000 feet. It is the America's parent. So a lot of people, you know, think Denali. Well, Denali is the tallest in North America, and is definitely harder because of its weather and the latitude, longitude, the barometric pressure at that such a high latitude. That one's actually harder than Aconcagua, but yeah, Aconcagua is the tall one. It's not going to be. It's a 7,000 meter peak. So there's 14 other 8,000 meter peaks ahead of it.